Come see me now." The voice cut through the hum of office noise like a blade, sharp, commanding, and unmistakably male. Maya Williams froze, the company phone pressed against her ear. "Excuse me?" she asked, her throat suddenly dry. "This is Mr. Whitaker's office." The voice on unmistakably male end said crisply, "I want to see you." Immediately. The line went dead. Maya's pulse roared in her ears. Mr. Whitaker, Richard Whitaker, the Billionaire CEO, the man whose name was whispered like a storm warning in the hallways of Whitaker Health. Her stomach twisted. The email. Oh God, the email. 15 minutes ago, in a haze of fatigue and desperation, she had sent a message meant for her son's doctor. Attached were the latest test results, oxygen levels dangerously low, and a note she'd typed through tears. "Please, Dr. Whitfield, I can't afford another hospital stay. I've borrowed from everyone I know. I'll take a second job if I have to. Please tell me there's something else we can do." She had meant to send it to Dr. Whitfield. Instead, her fingers had slipped. Autocomplete had filled in a name she'd seen only in company emails. Richard Whitaker, CEO, founder, billionaire. And now he wanted to see her. Maya's stomach twisted. She could already hear the accusations: misuse of company email, unprofessional behavior, violation of privacy. She would be fired. Fired and broke, with a 6-month-old baby who couldn't breathe right. "Hey," said a voice beside her. Donna, the office receptionist, peeked over her monitor. "You look like you saw a ghost." Maya swallowed. "Richard Whitaker just called for me." Donna's eyebrows shot up. Maya nodded, her throat dry. A low whistle. "Girl, you better say your prayers. He doesn't even talk to his vice presidents, let alone temps." The room stirred with whispers. "What did she do?" someone murmured. "Probably messed up another report. She won't last a week. They never do." Maya turned away, pretending not to hear. Her shoes clicked nervously against the tile as she moved toward the elevator, clutching her badge like a lifeline. But as she passed a cluster of desks, someone stretched out a foot too casually to be an accident. Her heel caught. She fell hard. Papers scattered. A sharp sting shot through her knee as it hit the floor. Laughter, then silence. "Watch where you're going, Williams," a voice sneered. "Clumsy much?" Maya bit her lip, blinking away tears. She gathered the papers with trembling hands, ignoring the ache in her leg. She wanted to disappear. But she couldn't. Not today. Her son needed her. Hours earlier, before work, she had sat in her tiny apartment beside Leo's crib, listening to the rasp of his breathing. The baby's small chest rose and fell too quickly. His skin was pale, the air wheezing out of him in shallow bursts. Maya had spent the last month begging for help. Churches, charities, even family friends from high school. Everyone had turned away. "Girl, you made your bed," one cousin had snapped. "You should have picked a better man if you wanted a daddy for that baby." Another friend had rolled her eyes. "We all got bills, Maya. You can't keep asking." Even her former boss at the diner, the one she'd worked for during college, had looked at her with pity. "I can't lend you more, honey. Business is slow." Humiliation had burned deeper than hunger. By the time she got to work that morning, her exhaustion was bone deep. She'd sent the email half blind, half pleading. Then she'd realized what she'd done, and now the call had come. The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless. Each number dinged like a countdown to her own execution. Her reflection in the polished doors revealed a young woman too tired to pass for 29. Warm brown skin gone pale. Dark curls pinned up messily. Eyes rimmed with sleepless nights. When the doors opened, the air was different, cooler, filtered, smelling faintly of cedar and polish. The executive floor was quiet as a chapel. She limped slightly on her bruised knee as she approached the reception desk. The woman there, elegant and immaculately dressed, looked her over with polite indifference. "Miss Williams?" "Yes," Maya managed. "Mr. Whitaker is expecting you." She gestured toward the large double doors at the end of the corridor. Maya smoothed her blouse, wiped her sweaty palms on her skirt, and knocked softly. "Come in." The voice was deep, commanding. Richard Whitaker stood by the window, tall and broad-shouldered, silver hair glinting in the afternoon light. For a moment, he didn't move. Then he turned and his gaze caught hers like a wire pulled taut. "Miss Williams," he said, each syllable measured. "Close the door, please." Her fingers trembled as she obeyed. He gestured toward a chair. "Sit." "I'm so sorry, Mr. Whitaker," she began, the words spilling out. "That email was an accident. I was trying to reach my son's doctor, not—" "I read it," he interrupted quietly. Her heart stopped. "I shouldn't have." "It's all right." He studied the printed email on his desk. "Your child's name is Leo?" "Yes. He's 6 months old. The report says he's struggling with bronchial inflammation." She nodded. "He can't breathe well some nights. The specialist says there's a treatment, but it's—" She swallowed the shame. "It's expensive." Richard's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. He pressed a button on his desk phone. "Get Dr. Franklin on the line," he told his assistant. "Tell him it's urgent." Maya blinked. "Dr. Franklin, as in—" "He's one of the best pediatric pulmonologists in the state. I can't afford—" "I didn't ask about cost." The firmness in his tone silenced her protest. When the call connected, his voice softened slightly. "Armand, I have a mother here. Her son's in respiratory distress. You'll see them tonight." He listened, then said, "Thank you." Hanging up, he looked at Maya again. "My driver will take you there at 6. You'll have what you need." Maya's throat tightened. "Mr. Whitaker, why are you doing this? You don't even know me." He was silent for a long moment. Finally, he said, "Once, I lost someone to the same thing. I don't intend to let it happen again." She didn't understand, but something in his voice told her not to ask. As she turned to leave, he called out, "Miss Williams." She stopped. "Keep me informed about your son." Directly. Their eyes met. Hers were full of confusion and gratitude. His, shadowed with something far older regret. When Maya left the office, her knees still throbbed, and whispers still followed her. But for the first time in weeks, Hope, small, trembling, unbelievable, breathed beside her like a faint heartbeat. If you felt Maya's pain and hope, give this story a like and comment where you're watching from. You might find someone nearby feeling the same. The elevator doors slid shut behind Maya with a soft mechanical sigh, and for a moment, the world felt like it had gone still. She stood inside the sleek silver box, her reflection staring back at her pale, wide-eyed, trembling. The carpet beneath her feet was plush, muffling the shakiness in her stance. Somewhere between the 40th floor and the lobby, her breath came in short, uneven bursts. She leaned against the wall, clutching the black business card Richard Whitaker had given her like a lifeline. It was heavy, matte, understated, the kind of thing that said everything without saying a word. On it, a single name, Thorne Private Transport Services, and a phone number. 6 o'clock. She looked at her watch. It was 4:12. There was just enough time to get home, pack Leo's things, and pray. The lobby was bustling, but Maya barely noticed. She limped slightly on her injured knee as she passed through the rotating glass doors and stepped into the crisp fall air. The sky had darkened with early dusk, a gray shroud casting the city in dim gold. Boston pulsed around her honking taxis, muttered curses, the smell of hot dogs from a nearby vendor. But inside her, everything was quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after you've cried all your tears and then been handed something like mercy. She flagged down a cab with a trembling arm. Her apartment was a third-floor walk-up in Dorchester. The hallway smelled like old paint and boiled rice. A package of someone else's Amazon delivery sat unopened beside the mailboxes, and the overhead light flickered with every gust of wind. She unlocked the door with a familiar twist and stepped inside. "Hey, baby," she whispered, dropping her bag on the floor as she crossed the tiny living room. Leo was lying in his bassinet, eyes fluttering open at the sound of her voice. His cheeks were flushed, and his breathing was still fast. Maya scooped him up gently, pressing her lips to his damp forehead. "We're going to see someone special tonight," she said, rocking him against her shoulder. "A doctor who might really help." She packed his diaper bag with practice-speed extra onesies, a bottle, his favorite giraffe toy, the inhaler she could barely afford. She hesitated before grabbing a thin envelope of medical bills and stuffing it in too. Then, she changed into jeans and a clean sweater, brushing her hair back into a low ponytail. As she checked her reflection in the bathroom mirror, her eyes stopped on a small photo tucked in the corner of the frame. Maya, at 15, Next to her mother, Caroline. Caroline had been a nursing student, smart and fierce, who'd worked nights and studied during the day until Maya was born. She never spoke of Maya's father only once. When Maya had asked, had her mother said, he was rich and scared, and he ran. Maya never pressed. It didn't matter. Until now. Now, a rich man was helping. And he didn't look scared. At 5:28 p.m., a sleek black town car pulled up outside her building. The driver stepped out, checked the address, and opened the back door for her without a word. Maya slid inside, holding Leo close. The city blurred past the tinted windows. Maya watched the streets turn from cracked sidewalks and corner stores into tree-lined boulevards and brownstone mansions. At exactly 6, they arrived at a stately home in Cambridge. It looked more like a museum than a clinic. Columns, stone steps, and warm lights glowing from the windows. A woman in medical scrubs met them at the door. "Miss Williams, come in. Dr. Franklin is ready for you." The waiting room smelled faintly of lavender. Not antiseptic, not fear, just calm. Maya barely had time to sit before a tall man with kind eyes appeared. "Miss Williams, I'm Dr. Franklin, and this must be Leo." He had a warm voice, the kind that made you want to exhale. "Mr. Whitaker said you'd be coming." Maya hesitated. He arranged this?" "Personally," the doctor nodded. "He told me to treat your son like family." Her eyes stung. She blinked quickly and followed him into the exam room. Dr. Franklin worked gently, listening to Leo's lungs, checking his vitals. He asked thoughtful questions about Maya's pregnancy, her own asthma as a child, Leo's sleep patterns. After 20 minutes, he stepped back, removing his stethoscope. "Your son has a severe form of infant bronchiolitis, and it's not improving with what he's on." "I figured," Maya said softly. "But," he added, "there's a newer protocol, a combination of medication and nebulizer therapy that's been highly effective. It's expensive, not always covered by insurance." I can't." "You don't have to." Dr. Franklin handed her a folder. Inside were prescriptions, therapy plans, and a printed note. "All costs to be billed to the Whitaker Foundation. Client ID LW 6239. Maya stared at the note. "I don't understand. Why would he?" Dr. Franklin studied her face for a moment, then said quietly, "That man lost a child to the same thing, years ago. Since then, he's made it his mission to save others." She looked down at Leo, who was finally breathing a little easier. After a long pause, she whispered, "I don't know how to thank him." The doctor gave a soft smile. "Sometimes, you don't need to. You just make sure the help counts." It was almost 8 when Maya returned home. Leo was fast asleep in her arms, the new blanket Dr. Franklin had given her tucked around him, soft, hypoallergenic, stitched in pale blue. As she climbed the stairs, the weight of exhaustion settled back into her bones, but something else settled too, a strange, unfamiliar lightness. She unlocked her door and stepped into the quiet apartment. Her phone buzzed, a new message. "Unknown number. Let me know how the appointment went. RW." Maya stared at the message. The initials felt heavier than words. She typed back, hands trembling slightly. "Treatment plan in place. Doctor was kind. Leo already breathing better. Thank you." The reply came almost instantly. "Glad to hear it. More to come. Rest well tonight." She stared at the screen long after it went dark. Then she kissed Leo's forehead, tucked him in, and whispered, "For the first time, baby. I think we might be okay." Maya stepped into the office the next morning with a softness in her expression that hadn't been there in weeks. Her shoulders were still tired, but the tension had eased ever so slightly, like a knot half unraveled. Leo had slept through the night for the first time in days. His breathing was calmer, steadier. There were still shadows under her eyes, but for once, they weren't from panic. As she walked past the front desk, Donna raised an eyebrow. Well, you look like someone who got 8 hours in a miracle." Maya smiled faintly. "Something like that." She made it to her desk and began logging into her computer when she noticed the shift in energy around her. Heads turned too quickly. Voices dropped to a whisper when she walked by. At first, she thought she was imagining it. But then, halfway through checking emails, she overheard 2 coworkers near the water cooler. Didn't you hear? The temp had a private meeting with Whitaker himself. No way. She's been here, what, 2 months? 3. Barely. Now suddenly she's getting calls and car rides. I bet she's playing the sympathy card. I heard she's a single mom. The words hit like ice water down her spine. She kept her head down, fingers poised over her keyboard, pretending she hadn't heard. They didn't know. Not really. No one knew how many nights she'd slept sitting upright in a hard plastic hospital chair, holding Leo to her chest while machines beeped behind her. No one knew about the food pantries, the side jobs, the tears she swallowed because there was no time to cry. They only saw the moment the tides changed, never the flood she'd survived. At 10:45 a.m., Maya was summoned to HR. Her heart jumped. "Miss Williams," said the woman across the desk, a short, efficient-looking manager with a tight bun and expression to match. "Mr. Whitaker asked that your employment status be reviewed." Maya froze. "Effective immediately. Your position is being transitioned from temp to permanent. Your salary will be adjusted accordingly, and your benefits—" I'm sorry, what?" The woman looked up, unblinking. "You've been offered a permanent role. Congratulations." Zell. Maya sat there, stunned. Was this real? She wanted to feel joy. She wanted to let the relief flood through her like sunlight, but something held her back. The whispering voices, the side eyes, and that nagging question, why? Later that afternoon, Maya stepped into the staff lounge to heat up a container of homemade soup. The room was nearly empty, just one other woman sitting at the table near the window, scrolling through her phone. It was Becca Simmons, marketing assistant, mid-30s, known for her spotless reports and razor-sharp gossip. Maya nodded a polite hello and turned to the microwave. "Must be nice," Becca said suddenly, without looking up. "Sorry? Having a billionaire look out for you." Maya stiffened. "I don't know what you mean." Becca finally met her eyes. "Oh, come on. First the meeting, then the driver. Now full-time status? Some of us have been waiting years for that." Maya's voice was steady. "I didn't ask for any of it." "Oh, no," Becca said, standing to toss her coffee cup. "But you sure benefited from it, didn't you?" She brushed past Maya on her way out, shoulder grazing hers just enough to send a message. The microwave dinged. Maya didn't move. Her hands were cold. At the end of the day, she picked Leo up from the neighbor who watched him in the evenings and walked home as the sun dipped behind the rooftops. She held him closer than usual, listening to the soft breaths through his nose. When she reached her building, she found an envelope taped to her door. No address, no stamp, just her name, printed in block letters. She opened it slowly. Inside was a short note, printed on crisp stationery. "Miss Williams, your work on the donor reports last quarter did not go unnoticed. I'd like to discuss future opportunities. Please expect another call tomorrow. R.W." Maya stared at the letter, her breath catching. Not just charity, not just pity. He saw her work. She looked down at Leo, who blinked up at her sleepily from the sling against her chest. "We're not invisible anymore," she whispered. That night, she lay in bed long after Leo had fallen asleep, staring at the ceiling. Richard Whitaker. She had known the name her whole life. Everyone in Boston did. He was in Forbes, on the news, but now, she was starting to see a different version of the man. Not the CEO, the father who had lost a child. There had been something in his eyes when he mentioned it, not sorrow alone but guilt. She remembered something her mother had said once, years ago. The worst kind of men are the ones who run away from what they've made. Was that what he'd done? Was this his way of making amends for something else? She didn't know, but something about his silence, his help, his urgency, it didn't feel like coincidence. It felt personal, and Maya had learned long ago that when something felt personal, it usually was. Morning sunlight poured through the thin curtains of Maya's apartment, painting pale streaks across the wooden floor. The city was just waking up, the distant hum of buses, the sharp cry of a gull near the bay, the steady rhythm of footsteps below her window. Leo stirred in his crib, tiny fists flexing against the soft blue blanket that now covered him. That blanket had arrived before dawn. A delivery man had knocked at the door, polite but expressionless, holding a white box wrapped with a navy ribbon. Inside, neatly folded, was the blanket and a note in careful handwriting. For Leo. Hypoallergenic. Custom made. The same pattern my son used to have. R.W. Maya had read the note 3 times before she even touched the fabric. The blanket was light, impossibly soft, and warm to the touch. It smelled faintly of cedar, like something preserved in a quiet room for years. She hadn't known what to feel: gratitude, confusion, or something deeper that scared her. Now, as Leo gurgled beneath it, his breathing calmer than ever, she whispered, "You like it, don't you, baby?" He cooed, his tiny fingers gripping the edge of the cloth, and for the first time, Maya allowed herself a real smile. At the office, whispers followed her again, but they sounded different today. Curious. Careful. People still stared, but now their tones had shifted from mockery to speculation. "Whitaker must really see something in her," someone said behind the copier. "She's just lucky. Happens sometimes." Maya tried not to hear them. She'd learned that attention, whether kind or cruel, was just noise. What mattered was Leo's steady breathing last night, the first night in months without the terrifying rasp in his chest. She kept her head down, buried in donor reports and invoices. By late morning, she almost forgot the envelope from yesterday until her desk phone buzzed. "Miss Williams," said the calm voice of the CEO's assistant, "Mr. Whitaker would like to see you in his office at noon." Her pulse quickened. Of course. This time, though, fear wasn't the only thing she felt. There was curiosity, something like the tug of unfinished business. Richard's office was as she remembered: clean lines, quiet strength, and the faint scent of wood polish. The afternoon light poured through the vast windows, casting long shadows across the floor. He was seated this time, reading something on his tablet. When she entered, he looked up immediately. "Maya," he said, using her first name for the first time. "How's your son?" She hesitated at the sound of her name on his lips. "He's doing better," she said softly. "Dr. Franklin's treatment seems to be helping already." Richard nodded, satisfied. "Good. He's one of the best." Her eyes fell on the photo frame on his desk. A young boy, blonde curls and gray eyes, smiling at the camera. The same eyes Richard had, the same kind that had stared into hers that first day, filled with something unspoken. "He looks happy," she said gently. "He was," Richard replied. His voice carried that quiet weight again, the kind that makes silence louder than words. "He passed away just after his first birthday." Maya swallowed. "I'm so sorry." He waved off the condolence, not unkindly. Life has a cruel symmetry sometimes. His gaze drifted briefly to the city skyline beyond the glass. "When I read your email, it was like looking backward through time. Same illness, same fear, and the same feeling that you'd trade anything, everything for one more breath from your child." Maya felt her throat tighten. "That's exactly it," she said. "Every night, I just listen to make sure he's still breathing." Richard nodded. "That never goes away. Even when they grow up." The words hit her strangely, as though they carried a meaning he didn't intend, or perhaps one he didn't realize. He stood and walked to a cabinet near the window, pulling out a thin portfolio. "You have a background in data management, correct?" Maya blinked. "Yes, from my last job at the community center." "Good. I want you to assist the donor analytics team next quarter. It's a promotion of sorts. Consider it recognition for your performance." Her mouth fell open slightly. Thank you. I'll do my best." He gave a faint smile. "I believe you will." When she left the office, she couldn't shake the warmth of his gaze or the ghost of familiarity in his voice when he spoke about children. That evening, Maya stopped by the grocery store for the first time in weeks, without counting every dollar in her head. She bought fresh fruit, a loaf of rye bread, and a small bottle of honey. On the way home, she caught herself humming. The city lights blinked like tired eyes as she pushed the stroller up the cracked sidewalk. Leo dozed under the new blanket, his tiny mouth half open. For the first time in a long while, her world didn't feel like it was closing, and it felt like it might actually open. She reached her building and carried Leo upstairs, the bag of groceries bumping against her hip. Her knee still ached from the fall 2 days ago, but she barely noticed. When she opened the door, the phone was already ringing. She rushed to answer it before it woke the baby. "Miss Williams?" The voice was unmistakable Richard's. She froze. "Yes, sir." I didn't mean to call so late, he said. His tone was softer this time, less formal. I just wanted to confirm you received the blanket. I did, she said, glancing at Leo asleep in his crib. It's beautiful. Thank you. He loves it. I'm glad. My wife. He stopped mid-sentence, exhaling slowly. My late wife, she knitted one just like it. It helped our son sleep through the worst nights. I thought, perhaps it might help yours too. It does, Maya said, her voice barely a whisper. He slept peacefully for the first time last night. That's good to hear. There was a pause, then his voice lowered slightly, quieter, almost hesitant. You remind me of her. You know, the way you speak, the way you hold yourself when you're afraid but still standing tall. The words lingered in the air between them. Maya wasn't sure how to respond. That's kind of you, she said finally. Richard cleared his throat, returning to formality. Keep me updated on Leo's progress. And take care of yourself. Miss Williams? Good night, Mr. Whitaker. After the call ended, Maya stood for a long time by the crib, listening to Leo breathe. The blanket rose and fell gently with each inhale, each exhale. She couldn't shake the sense that this man, the powerful, unreachable Richard Whitaker, was somehow connected to her life in ways that went beyond coincidence. But she also knew what happened when people like her got too close to men like him. And yet, as she looked at her son, wrapped safely in the warmth of that blue blanket, she whispered to the quiet room, maybe, just this once, it's okay to hope. The next morning, Maya awoke early, before the first light broke over the city. The sky was still a soft blue-gray, the world quiet, save for the occasional hum of a distant train and the creak of her building settling. She sat on the couch with a warm cup of tea, her fingers curled around the ceramic as she watched Leo sleep in the bassinet. The blanket covered him like a soft shield, his chest rising and falling in calm, even rhythm. It was still strange, this peace. She had lived so long in survival mode that moments like these felt foreign, borrowed, but she wouldn't question them. Not yet. At 7 a.m., her phone buzzed. A new message lit up the screen. From RW, my driver will pick you up at 8:15. There's something I'd like to discuss before your shift. It's important. Maya stared at the message for a long time. Her gut tightened. This wasn't about donor reports. She didn't reply. Instead, she gently lifted Leo from the bassinet and got them both ready. She bundled him up warmly, fed him, and kissed his cheek. Then she called Miss Dana, her neighbor across the hall, to watch him for a couple of hours. You sure he'll be okay without you? Dana asked, glancing at the baby's sweet face. He's better now, Maya said, forcing a smile. Stronger, I think we both are. At precisely 8:15, the sleek black car rolled to a stop outside her building. The same driver as before, silent and respectful, opened the door and nodded. The city passed in muted colors through the tinted glass. Autumn leaves drifted along the sidewalks, orange and rust like embers from a dying fire. Maya tried to calm her nerves, tried not to let her thoughts spiral. But she could feel something shifting, something deep. She was led into Richard Whitaker's office without pause this time. No receptionist. No waiting. He was standing by the window again, hands behind his back, staring at the skyline. Maya, he said, turning to face her, thank you for coming. You said it was important. It is. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. She sat carefully, smoothing the hem of her blouse. Is something wrong? No, he said, watching her closely. But something's unresolved. He reached into the drawer of his desk and pulled out a folder, thin but old. The edges worn, the paper slightly yellowed. I had a conversation with someone last night, he said. An old family friend. Her name is Marie Jensen. Maya's brow furrowed. I don't know her. She used to be a nurse, Richard continued. Worked at Boston Memorial. She was there when my wife gave birth, 29 years ago. Maya blinked. The room seemed to tilt just slightly. Richard placed the folder gently on the desk, but didn't open it yet. My wife and I had a daughter. She was born while I was away on business. I didn't even make it back in time. And, when I returned, she was gone. Maya's breath caught. Gone? He nodded slowly. My wife told me she gave the baby up for adoption. Said she couldn't handle the pressure. That it would destroy us. His voice was distant, full of something deeper than regret. I never saw my daughter, never knew her name. Maya felt the air thicken. Her fingers curled around the armrests of the chair. Why are you telling me this? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he opened the folder and slid a photograph across the desk. It was an old hospital form. On it, a birth record. A name scribbled in careful ink. Maya Evelyn Williams. Date of birth. Place. Mother's name. Caroline Williams. Father. Her eyes locked on the date. Her date of birth. No, she whispered, her voice nearly breaking. That's not possible. Richard sat down across from her, his face unreadable. I didn't believe it either. But Marie Jensen remembered your mother. She said Caroline was a quiet, determined young woman. Said she looked heartbroken when she left the hospital. And she had a baby girl named Maya. Maya stood, breath shallow, heart racing. My mother told me nothing. She never mentioned your name. She said he ran, that he didn't want anything to do with us. Richard looked away, jaw tight. Maybe I did run, in my own way. Maybe I didn't ask the right questions. I trusted what I was told, and by the time I realized what might have happened, it was too late. Silence swallowed the room. Finally, Maya whispered, "You think I'm your daughter?" Richard met her gaze. "I know you are." Her mind reeled. Faces flashed before her eyes, her mother's weary smile. The unanswered questions. The resemblance she'd always seen but never named. "Why now?" she asked, voice hoarse. "Why me?" He leaned forward, his voice low. "Because I've failed too many people already. My wife. My son. And maybe you. I want to make it right. Maya. Whatever that looks like. I want to know you, not because of guilt, but because," his voice cracked, "because I don't want to miss another chance." Maya turned away, struggling to hold herself together. Emotions collided: anger, grief, confusion, hope. This man, this untouchable giant of industry, was claiming to be her father. The man who'd helped save her son might also be the man who'd unknowingly abandoned her. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything now," Richard said gently. "Just think about it. Talk to someone. Yell at me if you need to. I'll be here." She didn't reply. She couldn't. Not yet. He walked her to the elevator in silence. Just before the doors closed, he said softly, "I missed your first breath, Maya. But maybe I don't have to miss the rest." The doors slid shut, and Maya stood inside the elevator, breathless. When she stepped out onto her floor, the world felt entirely different, as though something had broken open, something long buried. Her phone buzzed. A message from Dana. "Leo's fine. Still asleep. Blanket hasn't moved once. Looks like peace finally found him." Maya sank onto a bench in the hallway, hands shaking. She didn't know what came next, but she knew one thing for sure. The truth had found its way out of the shadows, and it was only just beginning. The sky over Boston was gray and moody that afternoon, its clouds heavy with the scent of coming rain. Maya stood at the window of the office lounge, staring out over the narrow alleyway behind the building. Cars crept below like tired ants. Her hands were stuffed into the pockets of her coat, but they trembled slightly. She hadn't told anyone, not even Dana, about what Richard had said. About the photo, about the form, about the possibility that her entire life had been built on half a truth. Maya Williams, daughter of a billionaire. The words didn't fit in her mouth, didn't sit right in her heart. And yet, she couldn't shake the way Richard had looked at her when he said, "I know you are." She didn't want to believe it, but she also couldn't deny the strange familiarity in his face, in the silence that lived between his words, in the photograph of a child she'd never met who somehow looked like her own son. That was the part that chilled her most. Leo. Her son looked more like Richard than like Leo's actual father. And Leo was white. Maya had always believed it was just one of those genetic quirks. His father, Kyle, had pale skin and blue eyes. It made sense, sort of. But now? Now everything was twisted with questions. Her thoughts were interrupted by a quiet knock on the door. She turned. It was Richard's assistant, Lauren, poised and soft-spoken, with eyes that always seemed to know too much. "Mr. Whitaker sent this for you," Lauren said, handing her a sealed envelope. "He asked that you read it privately." Maya nodded, her fingers tightening around the paper. "Thank you." Back at her desk, she opened it carefully. Inside was a short note, handwritten. "Maya, no pressure, no expectations. But if you're willing, I've arranged for a private DNA screening. Results in 24 hours. My driver can take you today. Everything has been pre-arranged. All you have to do is show up. No matter what it says, I won't disappear again. R." She read it twice, 3 times, then folded it and slipped it into her purse. 2 hours later, Maya sat in a quiet, windowless room at a private diagnostics center just outside the city. The nurse was kind, chatty even, but Maya could barely register what she was saying. She held a swab in her hand like it was a key to a locked door she wasn't sure she wanted to open. "It's painless," the nurse said. "Just a cheek swab, in and out in 5 minutes." Maya nodded, her throat dry. After the test was done, she stepped out into the street, the early evening air damp and cool against her skin. The driver was waiting, the same silent man in the dark suit. He opened the door without a word. She hesitated, then slid into the back seat. "Where to, Miss Williams?" he asked gently. Maya stared out the window. "Home." At home, Leo was fussy, teething, maybe, or maybe just sensing the storm inside her. She held him against her chest, rocking gently in the old chair she'd inherited from her mother. The room was dim, save for the soft glow of the hallway light. Maya sang to him, a lullaby her mother used to hum, something about starlight and safe places. Her phone buzzed again. A message from Kyle, Leo's biological father. "Kyle, still no answer. I want to see my son. You can't keep ignoring me." Maya stared at the screen, her stomach churned. They hadn't spoken since Leo's birth, and even then, his interest had been fleeting. She remembered his expression in the hospital, more confusion than awe, more fear than love. He had held Leo once, then handed him back like a borrowed item. Now he was texting again, demanding, impatient. She didn't reply. The next morning, Maya woke to an alert on her phone. "Your DNA results are ready." Her heart stopped. She stared at the screen, suddenly cold despite the warmth of her blanket. The message included a private link, password protected. She entered it with trembling fingers. When the screen loaded, her eyes found the words immediately. Parent-child relationship, 99.99998% match. Subject A, Richard Whitaker. Biological father of Subject B, Maya Williams. She didn't breathe, couldn't. The screen might as well have exploded. It was real, not theory, not mistake, not assumption. Richard Whitaker was her father. She walked into the office 2 hours later like a ghost. The city felt too loud, the elevator too fast, her desk too small, and the walls of the office suddenly too thin to hold the weight of what she now knew. At 10:01 a.m., her phone buzzed. It was Lauren again. "Mr. Whitaker will see you when you're ready." Maya stared at the message for a long time. Then she stood, smoothed her blouse, and walked. Richard rose when she entered, a look of quiet anticipation in his eyes. He didn't speak, just watched her. She stood there, trying to find the words, her voice caught in her throat. "I saw the results," she finally said. He nodded. "I know." There was a pause. "I'm angry," she said. "I'm confused. I feel like I've been lied to my whole life." "I understand. My mother never said your name." "Not once. She had every reason not to. I was young, scared. I didn't go looking for her the way I should have." Silence again. "I don't know how to do this," Maya admitted. "I don't know how to just have a father." Richard stepped forward, but not too close. "You don't have to do anything right now. But I'm here. I've been waiting a long time to say that and mean it." "Duh." She looked at him. Really looked. The lines in his face. The weariness. The sincerity. Finally, she whispered, "Leo deserves a grandfather who shows up." Richard's jaw tightened. "He will have one, if you'll let me." Maya nodded slowly. "I'll try," she said, and for the first time in her life, she felt like maybe she wasn't walking through the world alone anymore. It rained the following morning. Not the gentle drizzle that Boston sometimes offered in early fall, but a steady, relentless downpour that darkened the sidewalks and turned the streets into rivers of light and reflection. Maya stood at her window, her coffee growing cold in her hand, watching the raindrops blur the view like tears she hadn't cried yet. She still hadn't told anyone the truth. Not Dana. Not her co-workers. Not even Kyle. Especially not Kyle. After yesterday's DNA confirmation, Richard hadn't pushed. He hadn't tried to insert himself or demand recognition. Instead, he sent a single message that night. "Whenever you're ready, I'd like to take you and Leo to dinner. No press, no staff, just us." She hadn't replied yet. The thought of sitting at a dinner table across from the man who had unknowingly shaped the silence of her life filled her with equal parts terror and longing. For what? Connection? Answers? Or just proof that the lonely parts of her story might finally have a name? She was still staring at the window when a knock came at the door. It was Dana. "You got a visitor. Honorable tall. Sharp suit. Real polite. Asked for you by name." Maya's stomach dropped. "What kind of visitor?" Dana hesitated. "White guy. Early 30s. Real cold eyes." Didn't say much. Maya's heart sank. She already knew. Kyle. She opened the door slowly. There he was, same buzzed blonde hair, same squared jaw, same sharp eyes that once held boyish charm, and now held something else entirely. Accusation. "Kyle," she said, her voice low, "what are you doing here? I called. You ignored me. I've been busy." He looked past her into the apartment. "I want to see him. Now's not a good time." He crossed his arms. "He's my son." Maya stood her ground. "And where were you when he was wheezing in my arms at 2 a.m.? When I pawned my mom's earrings to buy his formula? When I begged clinics for help?" Kyle's mouth tightened. "You never gave me a chance." She laughed bitterly. "I gave you so many chances. You just didn't want the hard parts." He stepped forward, voice lowering. "Look, I'm not here to fight. But I heard some things. People are talking. About you. And him." Maya's blood ran cold. "What people?" "Office gossip. Some blog posts. Someone said you've been meeting with Richard Whitaker." Meh. Her throat tightened. "That's none of your business." "Oh, it is," he snapped. "Because if you're trying to pass Leo off as his—" "What?" she gasped. Kyle's voice hardened. "You think I don't know how this works? A girl like you, desperate, latches onto a rich man, pretends." Before he could finish, Maya slammed the door in his face. Her hands were shaking. She locked the door, her breath ragged, chest rising and falling too fast. Leo started crying from the other room, startled by the noise. She rushed to him, scooping him up in her arms, holding him tightly. "Shh, Mommy's here, you're okay." But she wasn't. Not really. Not now. An hour later, she sat in Richard's office again. Not because he summoned her. She had asked for the meeting. He was surprised when she arrived, hair still damp from the rain, Leo bundled in her arms. He stood immediately. "Is everything okay?" "No," Maya said, sitting down without waiting for permission. "Kyle came to my door this morning. He knows something's going on. He's angry. And he thinks—" She stopped. "He thinks I'm using Leo to get to you." Richard's jaw tightened. "He said that to you?" She nodded. I slammed the door in his face. "Good," Richard muttered. Then more gently, "I'm sorry he made you feel unsafe." Maya stroked Leo's hair. "He's never wanted to be a father until now. And now, because you helped me, he sees leverage." Richard walked to the window, then turned to face her. "If he tries anything legally or otherwise, I'll have my lawyers ready. I don't want to turn this into a custody battle," she said softly. "But I also won't let him use my son." "You won't have to," Richard said. They were silent a moment, the weight of everything pressing in again. Then Maya asked, almost in a whisper, "Why didn't you look for us sooner?" Richard looked at her, eyes raw. "Because I believed the lie. My wife said the baby had been adopted. She made me sign papers I didn't read. I was young. Maya. Selfish. Obsessed with building something. And by the time I wanted to undo it, it felt like it was too late." She studied him. You ever regret it, not being there? He sat down across from her, slowly, deliberately, every day. Leo stirred in her arms, blinking up at the room around him. Richard leaned forward, watching his grandson for the first time up close. He has your mouth, he said quietly. But those eyes, those are my son's. The silence between them shifted. It was no longer cold, it was fragile, tender. Maya reached into her bag and handed him the hospital photo of Leo as a newborn. In case you want to. Keep something. Richard took it with both hands, like it was holy. She stood then, gently cradling Leo. I'm not ready for dinner yet, she said. I understand. But maybe, coffee next week? He smiled. I'd like that. She turned to go, then paused at the door. You said you didn't want to miss the rest of my life. I did. Well, she said, glancing back, you're just in time. Maya didn't return to her desk after leaving Richard's office. Her heart was still pounding, and Leo had fallen asleep in her arms again, his soft breath warming her neck. She walked instead to the small wellness room on the 3rd floor, just a quiet corner with a recliner and a lock on the door, a temporary retreat. She sat there in silence for 20 minutes, listening to the faint hum of the HVAC system and Leo's gentle snores. Her thoughts were racing, but her body was frozen. Kyle's sudden appearance had shaken her. The timing, the accusations, the venom behind his words, it all stung more than she cared to admit. But what lingered the most was the fear. Kyle wasn't just angry, he was calculated. If he started whispering rumors about Leo's paternity or worse, started legal action, things could get messy fast. She was still in that fog when she heard a quiet knock on the door. Maya? A female voice called softly. Maya froze. Yes? It's Annika, from accounting. Maya opened the door slowly. Annika stood there with her laptop tucked under her arm, her brows slightly furrowed with concern. I didn't mean to intrude, Annika said gently. I heard about this morning. People are talking. Maya stepped back to let her in. Yeah, seems like that's what they do around here. Annika walked inside and closed the door behind her. She glanced down at Leo. He's beautiful. Thanks. I hope you don't think I'm being nosy, Annika said, pulling up a chair. But I've worked here 5 years. I've seen what this company does to women, especially black women, when they're seen as too close to power. Maya looked up sharply. What do you mean? Annika lowered her voice. I mean, there's always someone watching, someone waiting for you to step out of line, even if you never actually do. I saw what happened to Jolene Harris. She got promoted after collaborating with Richard on that South Africa project. Next thing you know, she was reassigned, whispered about, and eventually pushed out. I didn't know that, Maya said quietly. Of course not, Annika said. They keep it quiet, but I'm telling you this because I don't want that to happen to you. Maya looked down at Leo and then back up. It's too late for whispers. People already think I'm sleeping my way up the ladder. Annika tilted her head. But you're not, right? Maya gave a tired laugh. It's so much more complicated than that. I figured. Annika reached into her bag and pulled out a small flash drive. I shouldn't be doing this, but there's something you need to see. Maya frowned. What is it? Activity logs from HR. Kyle's name was entered into the visitor system before he ever came to your door. And it wasn't flagged. That means someone inside invited him or cleared his visit manually. Maya felt a chill crawl up her spine. Why would anyone do that? Annika looked her squarely in the eye. Because someone wants you gone. Later that evening, Maya sat alone at her kitchen table, Leo finally asleep in his crib, the flash drive plugged into her laptop. The folder Annika had given her contained timestamps, access approvals, and internal chat logs. Kyle had been buzzed into the building by Becca Simmons, the woman from marketing who had once sneered at her in the break room and accused her of playing the sympathy card. There it was. A date, a time, a single line. Let him in. She won't see it coming. Maya closed her laptop, hands trembling. This wasn't just office gossip anymore. This was sabotage. The next morning, she arrived at work with a fresh calm in her steps. Her pain had cooled into precision. She wore a navy blazer that framed her like armor and pulled her curls back into a low twist. She carried herself like someone who wasn't asking for space anymore, she was claiming it. She stopped by Richard's office first. Morning, Maya, he said, clearly surprised. Is Leo all right? He's fine, she replied. but we need to talk. Gone. She handed him a printed copy of the visitor log and the chat transcript from Becca's system. He read it carefully, his brow furrowing. She invited Kyle? Yes, Maya said. She let him in, knowing exactly what it would stir up. She wanted a scene, and it worked. Richard stood slowly. This ends now. Maya crossed her arms. I don't want special treatment. I just want fairness. You'll have it, he said, his voice firm. Starting today. He walked to the phone and pressed a button. Lauren, have Becca Simmons report to HR immediately. Maya watched him, realizing for the first time that this wasn't just a rich man trying to make amends. This was a father standing up. Not for guilt, for justice. At noon, Maya returned to her desk. Her coworkers stole glances, but no one whispered now. The office was too quiet, as if everyone sensed the balance of power had shifted. She opened her email and found a new message from Richard. Subject, dinner. Message, the invitation still stands. Bring Leo. Let's talk about the future, not the past. She stared at the words for a long time. Then she typed one sentence in reply. We'll see you Friday at 7. And for the first time, the future didn't feel so impossible. The Whitaker estate wasn't just a home, it was a statement. Nestled in the hills just outside Boston, it stood like a forgotten fortress wrapped in modern luxury gated entrance, sprawling gardens, tall columns kissed by ivy. Maya had seen pictures of homes like this in magazines while waiting for Leo's pediatrician appointments. But nothing compared to standing in front of one. Holding her child, knowing she had been invited in. The black town car that picked her up was silent for most of the ride. Leo slept in his carrier, a small, plush lion clutched in his fingers, one of the few toys Richard had sent earlier in the week, accompanied by a simple note. For his first dinner here, we'll start small. Now, standing before the towering front doors, Maya's heart pounded against her ribs like fists on a locked door. But this time, she wasn't locked out. A staff member opened the door with a warm smile and an even warmer greeting. Good evening, Miss Williams. Mr. Whitaker is expecting you. Please come in. She stepped inside, her heels clicking softly against polished oak floors. The entryway was expansive but not overwhelming. A grand staircase coiled to the second floor, and soft lighting danced across paintings and framed photographs. One photo caught her eye. Richard, as a young man, standing beside a woman with soft eyes and a tired smile. His late wife. Thank you for coming, came a voice from the hallway. Richard appeared, dressed simply in a crisp shirt and slacks. No tie, no pretense. Hi, Maya said, adjusting Leo's blanket as the baby stirred. Hope we're not early. Right on time, Richard replied, his voice gentler than usual. Let me show you the dining room. The room was elegant but understated candles on the table, soft jazz playing from the corner speaker, and only 3 place settings. One high chair had been added at the end, already prepared with a sippy cup and a soft bib. You remembered, Maya said, surprised. I asked Dana, Richard said. I called her yesterday. She gave me Leo's usual dinner routine. Maya blinked. You called Dana? She grilled me harder than my own shareholders, he chuckled. They Saturday. Dinner began with a gentle rhythm, soft questions, polite answers. Richard asked about Leo's sleep, his favorite toys, how Maya had been handling work. He didn't press too deep, but his eyes carried the weight of questions he didn't dare speak yet. I wasn't sure you'd come, he admitted halfway through the main course lemon chicken with roasted vegetables and wild rice. I wasn't sure either, Maya said. Why did you? She hesitated. Because my son deserves to know where he came from, and I deserve to see if there's more to you than boardrooms and titles. Richard nodded, absorbing her words. I know I can't make up for 29 years, he said, but I can start now, if you'll let me. No. Maya looked down at Leo, who was chewing quietly on a tiny spoon, his eyes darting between the 2 adults as if sensing something important. I don't need a father, she said, but Leo might need a grandfather, and that means we figure this out together. Richard's eyes softened. I'd like that. After dinner, they moved to the sunroom. The night had settled into a hush, and rain tapped gently on the glass ceiling above them. Richard held Leo for the first time. He was awkward at first, elbows too stiff, posture too straight, but Maya coached him through it, and something shifted. Leo giggled as Richard made silly faces. a sound so pure it cracked the ice that had lingered between them since the moment she learned the truth. "You know," Richard said as he bounced the baby gently, "he's got a grip like a stockbroker." Maya laughed. "I'll take that as a compliment." Richard's smile faded, replaced with something heavier. "He's perfect. A pause, and I wasn't there to help you when he needed it most." Maya leaned back in her chair. "He's here now. And I'm not going to let regret shape every moment going forward." He nodded. "You sound like your mother." It was the first time either of them had spoken about her directly. "She never told me anything about you," Maya said. "Not a name, not even a hint." "She was right not to," Richard said. "At least back then. I was too buried in myself to realize what I was losing." "No. Do you remember her?" "Every day," he said. "She had fire, a quiet strength. She challenged me, never let me coast." Maya smiled faintly. "That sounds like her." Richard looked at her for a long moment. "You remind me of her in every way." Silence settled again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was full. Of things said. And things accepted. By the time Maya left the estate, the rain had slowed to a mist. The driver helped her into the car and gently closed the door behind her. As they pulled away from the gate, Maya looked back once. Richard stood at the door, watching them leave, Leo's plush lion tucked under his arm like a symbol of something reclaimed. Something not perfect, but possible. Back in the car, Maya whispered to her son, "He's trying. That's all we can ask for, isn't it?" Leo made a soft sound in reply. Not quite a word, but not silence either. Maya took it as a yes. Monday morning arrived with a crisp breeze and the dry promise of October sunlight. Maya stood in front of her mirror adjusting her blouse, then leaned over to brush Leo's soft curls as he sat in his carrier on the bed, gnawing on a teething ring. There was a new steadiness in her chest, not peace, exactly, but direction. Dinner at Richard's had been surreal, comforting, and exhausting all at once. It wasn't closure, but it was a beginning. She tucked Leo's health card into her purse, checked his extra bottles, and threw on her coat. Today was his follow-up at the pediatric clinic, the one Richard had arranged private, discreet, and well-funded. The driver, now a familiar face, smiled at her. "Morning, Miss Williams." "Maya," she reminded him. "Still can't get used to calling you that," he said kindly, holding the door for her. As the car rolled toward the clinic, Maya texted Dana to thank her again for watching Leo this past weekend. Dana's reply was quick and warm. "Girl, don't worry. That man looked like he'd kill for that baby. I slept better knowing Leo got a granddaddy with money and good knees." Maya chuckled softly, but the laugh faded the moment she walked into the clinic, because Kyle was sitting in the waiting area. He stood up the moment he saw her. "Maya." "No." Her body tensed, instinctively stepping between him and Leo. "You're not supposed to be here," she said. "How did you know about this appointment?" Kyle held up a folded piece of paper. "It was on the system. I requested it. You have no legal custody. I still have rights, and I want a paternity test." Maya's voice dropped into a low, dangerous calm. "Why now?" "Because of Richard?" He didn't answer. "I knew it," she said. "You're not here for Leo. You're here because you think he's your ticket to something. Money, leverage, headlines." Kyle stepped closer, ignoring the other parents who glanced their way. "I don't care about the money. But if he's not mine, I want to know. And if he is mine, you don't get to keep him from me." Maya's fists clenched. "You had your chance. You walked away." The nurse at the reception desk stood slowly, noticing the tension. "Everything okay?" Maya nodded stiffly. "Yes. We'll be in exam room 3. "Oh." Kyle looked ready to argue again, but Maya moved past him. Leo cooed softly, blissfully unaware of the storm swirling just beyond his small world. Inside the room, the doctor examined Leo gently and patiently, explaining every step. Maya answered questions, but her mind was spinning. After the checkup, the doctor mentioned the blood panel Richard had ordered for immunity levels, lingering respiratory markers, and possible genetic tracing. A basic test, with potentially big answers. "It's optional," the doctor said, "but it would give you a complete picture." Maya nodded. "Do it." As the nurse prepared the kit, she turned to Maya, and hesitated. Would you like to include paternity confirmation? We do that as a courtesy when there's concern. Kyle appeared in the doorway before Maya could answer. Yes, I want it. Maya looked at him, then down at Leo. She didn't trust Kyle, but she wanted this part settled, once and for all. Fine, she said. Let's do it. Kyle grinned, but it was the grin of someone who thought he was winning a game he didn't understand. 2 days later, the email arrived. Maya sat in the quiet of her apartment while Leo napped. She opened the message and read the first line twice. Paternity analysis, result. Probability of paternity, 0%. Her breath hitched. She read it again. Kyle was not the father. Her knees buckled slightly, and she gripped the counter for support. Not because she was shocked deep down, she'd always known, but because the war that had been raging silently in her chest had finally ended. Kyle wasn't Leo's father. Then who? Her phone buzzed. Another email. This one from Richard's legal team. Subject: Birth Certificate Adjustment Inquiry. Message: Mr. Whitaker requests your permission to begin the process of legally adding his name to Leo's birth certificate as grandfather and emergency guardian, should you approve. Tears welled in Maya's eyes. She didn't reply right away. She walked into Leo's room instead, picked him up gently, and rocked him in her arms. You're safe, she whispered. You're mine, and you're his. Not because of DNA, but because he chose us. When she finally replied, her message was simple. Yes, let's begin. The next morning at work, Becca Simmons was gone. HR said she'd resigned, unexpectedly. But the smug looks and bitter whispers that once followed Maya down the hall were gone. In their place, silence, and a few cautious nods of respect. Annika from accounting passed her a sticky note during lunch. You flipped the script. Don't stop now. Maya smiled. She wouldn't. That evening, Richard invited her back to the estate. This time, when they sat in the sunroom, Maya had brought a small folder of her own. What's this? He asked. Leo's name change documents, she said. If you're serious about being his grandfather, I want him to carry a piece of both of us. Richard opened the folder and read the new name printed across the top. Leonard Richard Whitaker Williams. He didn't say a word at first. Just looked up at her, his eyes full of something deep and indescribable. Thank you, he said finally, his voice thick. This means more than I can say. Maya reached for her tea, her hand brushing his by accident. Neither of them pulled away. Let's do better this time, she said. And for once, Richard didn't feel like he was trying to fix the past. He was finally building something for the future. The courthouse was smaller than Maya expected. Nestled in the historic district of Cambridge, it looked less like a place where lives changed and more like an old library forgotten by time. Ivy curled around the outer brick walls, and the American flag outside flapped steadily in the autumn wind. Maya stood at the base of the steps, clutching Leo in one arm and a manila folder in the other. Richard stood beside her, quiet, composed, his tie a little crooked. For once, it made him look less like a billionaire and more like someone's grandfather. You ready? He asked gently. Maya exhaled. As I'll ever be. They walked in together. The hearing was procedural, brief, and oddly sterile. A judge reviewed the petition for name modification, verified Leo's identity, and glanced over the affidavit signed by Maya and Richard. No drama, no objections. Just a pen scratching paper and a stamp sealing a new truth. From this day forward, Leo's full legal name would be Leonard Richard Whitaker Williams. When the judge looked up and smiled, Maya nearly burst into tears. Congratulations, Miss Williams. And Mr. Whitaker, the judge added with a nod. Your grandson has a very fine name. Richard gave a small bow of the head. Thank you, Your Honor. Outside the courtroom, Maya sat on a bench and held Leo against her chest. His tiny fingers curled around her necklace, her mother's necklace. It's done, she whispered. You've got a name you can carry, little man. Richard knelt beside her, placing a gentle hand on Leo's foot. He's part of a legacy now, but it's not just about the name. Maya looked at him. Then what is it about? Richard's eyes found hers. It's about rewriting what legacy means, about making sure this boy grows up knowing he was wanted, chosen, protected. Maya nodded slowly. I couldn't give that to you, he added, voice roughening, but I can give it to him. She didn't reply with words. She just leaned her head gently against his shoulder. That night, back in her apartment, Maya tucked Leo in and sat at the edge of her bed, staring at a new email from the legal team. Attached were draft plans Richard had requested. A trust fund for Leo, scholarship savings, and a future co-guardianship clause, should Maya ever want to add Richard formally to those rights. She read every line, every footnote. There was no pressure, no manipulation, no strings, just responsibility, just love offered without demand. She closed the laptop and picked up her phone. A missed call from Kyle sat at the top of her screen. She hadn't spoken to him since the DNA results. There had been no apology, just silence. He didn't fight back, and part of her wondered if that was his way of finally stepping out of their lives. She hoped so. Later that week, the office was buzzing with its usual Monday chaos. But this time, Maya noticed something different. The stares weren't hostile. The whispers had turned into nods. Even Becca's absence no longer felt like a shadow, it felt like cleared space. Anika caught her at the elevator. "You walk different," she said with a grin. Maya smiled. "Maybe I finally know where I stand. Well, wherever that is, it's above the drama." Just before the elevator doors closed, Anika added, "Richard called me in for a meeting this morning." "Oh?" "He's launching a diversity mentorship program," she said. "Wants women of color to be paired with board-level mentors." "Guess who he asked to lead it?" Maya blinked. "You?" "Us." The doors closed. Maya stared at her reflection in the mirrored walls, Leo's name echoing in her chest. Legacy, redefined. On Friday evening, she returned to the Whitaker estate. Not as an outsider, not as a maid, not even as a daughter. She came as a woman with a name, with a voice, with a seat at the table. Richard greeted her at the door with Leo's favorite lion toy and a rare smile that reached all the way to his tired eyes. "You're just in time," he said. "For what?" He stepped aside and pointed toward the living room. There, arranged neatly on a long oak table, were photo albums, old ones, leather-bound, dusted off, full of curled edges and faded prints. "I thought you should know where you came from too," Richard said. Maya's throat caught. He sat beside her as they turned the pages together, photos of a young Richard at Harvard, her mother smiling in the background of a holiday party, notes scribbled in the margins of forgotten letters. "I kept it all," he murmured. "Even when I tried to forget, I couldn't throw it away." Maya placed a finger over her mother's image. "She would have hated all of this," she said with a half smile. "The mansion, the wealth. She would have loved him," Richard replied, nodding toward Leo. They turned another page, and then another. History had once split them apart, but tonight they were writing a new one together. Maya had always believed the past couldn't hurt her unless she let it in. But what she was learning slowly, painfully, was that the past had a key, and it knew when to turn it. A week after Leo's name had been legally changed, and 2 days after she and Anika launched the first session of the mentorship program, the email arrived. It came from an address she didn't recognize. No subject line, just 2 short sentences. "I know the truth about you, and I think the press would love it." Maya stared at the screen, her pulse quickening. She clicked the sender's address. Anonymous, scrambled. It could have come from anyone, or worse, someone who already had come. Her first thought was Kyle. She hadn't heard from him since the DNA results. He had vanished just as suddenly as he'd returned. But Kyle was petty, and when he didn't win, he often played dirty. She forwarded the email to Richard immediately. His reply came less than 5 minutes later. "Come to the estate. Now. I'm calling my team." "Nah." Maya didn't say much during the ride over. Leo was with Dana, thankfully, so she didn't have to worry about his safety. But her mind swirled with possibilities. Her hands didn't stop shaking until she stepped into Richard's study, where he was already waiting with 2 men in dark suits, his personal security advisors. They stood when she entered. One nodded to her respectfully. "Miss Williams, I'm Aaron. This is Jacob. We've handled internal threats for the Whitaker family for 15 years. We'd like to ask you a few questions." Richard stood beside her. "You're not under any pressure here, Maya. But if someone's trying to target you or Leo, we need to act quickly." She nodded. The men asked calmly, respectfully, had anyone from her past threatened her before? Did she suspect Kyle? Had she shared private documents recently? Had anyone from her old jobs or Leo's medical visits acted suspicious? Maya tried to think through it all, but one name kept circling in her mind like smoke. Simone, her old roommate, a woman she'd trusted once. But a woman who had also snapped photos of Maya and Leo in the NICU, then posted them online in a moment of thoughtless cruelty. They hadn't spoken in over a year, not since Maya cut ties. "I'm not sure," Maya said aloud, "but I think I have someone I can check." Aaron nodded. "Do that, and forward anything else suspicious to us immediately." Jacob added, "If this is extortion or a threat against the child of a Whitaker heir, even unofficially, will escalate to legal." Maya glanced at Richard, startled. "Heir?" she echoed. Richard met her eyes evenly. "Leo carries my name. He's my blood. He's also part of the trust fund now. There are people who would love to weaponize that, especially against a young black mother who they think doesn't belong." Maya swallowed hard. "I do belong," she said, more to herself than anyone else. Richard smiled. "Yes, you do." Later that night, Maya sat alone in the guest room Richard had started referring to as hers during long visits. Leo was asleep in the nursery down the hall. She picked up her phone and, after a long breath, dialed a number she'd deleted a year ago. Simone answered on the second ring. "Maya?" Her voice was too chipper, too fake. "Hi," Maya said flatly. "Did you send me an email?" "What?" A nervous laugh. "Girl, no. Why would I?" "Cut it." Silence. "I don't have time for games," Maya said, voice sharp. "But if you sent that email, if you're trying to scare me or sell something to the press, understand this. I have people now. Lawyers. Investigators. Protection. You won't like what happens next." Simone was quiet. Then bitterly, she muttered, "Must be nice, having a rich daddy fix your problems." Maya froze. So she did know. "You saw the news," Maya said quietly. "I saw the court record," Simone snapped. "It's public, Maya. All I had to do was search your name, and that baby's new fancy name came right up. Whitaker? Williams? Please." Maya's jaw clenched. "Don't worry," Simone added coldly. "I'm not going to the press. Yet. But if you think I'm going to sit here watching you climb out of the mud while the rest of us drown." Maya ended the call. No threats. No arguments. Just silence. Because for the first time in her life, Maya realized she didn't owe anyone an explanation for her rise. She hadn't been given anything. She had survived everything. The next morning, she met Richard in the breakfast room. Leo babbled beside her in his high chair. "I called Simone," she said. "And?" "She's bitter. Jealous. But I don't think she's dangerous. Just watching. Like a vulture." Richard nodded. "We'll keep eyes on her. I've already had Jacob add her to our list." Maya sipped her coffee. "You think this is what it's always going to be like? People lurking, waiting to tear us down?" "Yes," he said honestly. "But you'll have more than just watchers now. You'll have defenders." He looked over at Leo, who had now smeared applesauce across his chin with a victorious squeal. "I want him to grow up knowing strength, not fear." Maya smiled, wiping Leo's face. "He already is." That weekend, she and Richard took Leo to the park near Beacon Hill, the same park Richard used to visit when he was a young father with a newborn son he didn't get to raise. This time, he carried his grandson proudly. No security detail, no headlines. Just a man and his daughter and a little boy learning how to laugh at birds. Maya looked up at the orange leaves above them. The past had come knocking. But for the first time, it didn't get to walk through the door. Maya stood in front of the mirror in the guest room of the Whitaker estate, adjusting the pearl button at the collar of her blouse for the third time. Outside, golden afternoon light filtered through the curtains, and the faint hum of staff voices echoed from downstairs. Tonight wasn't just dinner. It was family dinner. Not a casual meal, not a quiet one-on-one, but the first time Maya would sit at the Whitaker table, with the others. She glanced over at Leo, who was sound asleep in his travel crib, dressed in a tiny sweater vest that Richard had insisted on mailing to her 2 days ago. Maya took a breath and whispered, "Here we go, baby boy." Downstairs, Richard was waiting at the foot of the grand staircase, unusually tense. His 2 older daughters, Samantha and Meredith, had arrived earlier that afternoon with their husbands and teenage kids. Maya had only met them briefly once, years ago at a gala where she worked coat check. They hadn't even noticed her then. Now, they'd be sharing salad. "You don't have to do this," Maya said as she reached the final step. "Yes, I do," Richard said. "For you, for him, and for me." He offered his arm, and she took it, unsure whether it was support or ceremony. The dining room was warm and expansive, filled with low candlelight, gleaming silverware, and strained silence. As Maya entered, the room quieted even more. Samantha stood slowly, tall, elegant, with her mother's bone structure and her father's eyes. Meredith stayed seated, stirring her wine with a half-hearted glance. "Maya," Samantha said, voice careful, stretched like porcelain, "we've heard a lot about you recently." "I'm sure you have," Maya said evenly. "This is your?" Meredith asked, nodding toward the baby carrier that Richard had gently placed at the end of the table. "My son," Maya said. "His name is Leo." Richard cleared his throat. "Leonard Richard Whitaker, Williams." Samantha blinked. Meredith set her glass down a little too loudly. Silence. Then Samantha's husband leaned forward, his expression suddenly warm. "He's got strong eyes. Bright. Like yours, Richard." The tension broke, just slightly. Richard smiled. "He does." Dinner proceeded awkwardly at first. Small talk stuttered over roast chicken and string beans. Maya spoke when spoken to, trying not to scan the room for side eyes or whispered glances. But to her surprise, it wasn't hostility she felt. It was confusion. Samantha asked about Maya's work. Meredith inquired about the mentorship program. Their kids, blonde, polished, private school poised, barely looked up from their phones. But when Leo cooed and squealed, even they softened. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't war either. Later that evening, after dessert, Meredith lingered in the library where Maya was nursing Leo. She stood by the fireplace, swirling her second glass of scotch. "I Googled you," Meredith said. Maya didn't flinch. "I'm sure you did. I thought you were after the money." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Am I supposed to be flattered you've reconsidered?" Meredith's lips quirked. "No, but you're not what I expected." Maya stood and adjusted Leo on her shoulder, patting him gently. "That seems to be a theme around here." Meredith hesitated. "Do you believe him? About what happened with your mother?" Maya turned. "What he did, or didn't do, doesn't change the fact that she raised me alone, or that I lived 29 years without a father. That's the truth, I believe." Meredith nodded, subdued. "I'm not here to take anything," Maya added. "But I won't apologize for accepting what should have always been his responsibility." There it was, a line in the sand not drawn in anger, but in resolve. Meredith nodded once, then left quietly. By the time Maya returned upstairs, Richard was standing at the balcony off the hallway, hands in his pockets, staring out over the estate. "They didn't bite," he murmured without turning. "They didn't have to," Maya replied. "They listened." He turned to her then, eyes tired. "Was it too much?" Maya looked down at Leo in her arms. "It was just enough." She paused. "But don't think for a second I didn't notice what tonight was really about." Richard raised an eyebrow. "You weren't introducing me to the family," she said. "You were introducing Leo." He smiled. "Guilty." She walked toward him and looked out at the night Boston lights blinking in the distance, the sky still holding on to the last hues of dusk. "Let them question," she said. "Let them wonder. I'm not here to replace anyone. I'm here because we belong, not because of charity, but because of truth." Richard's voice was quiet. "He's going to be proud of you one day." Maya met his gaze. "He already makes me proud. That's enough for now." She kissed Leo's head, then turned toward her room. That night, for the first time since the day she emailed the wrong man by accident, Maya didn't dream about rejection or regret. She dreamed of a table, one with a seat that had always been hers, even if she'd had to build it herself. Maya sat behind her desk on the 14th floor of Whitaker Enterprises, flipping through a stack of legal documents, when a paper sliced the side of her finger. A small thing, barely a prick, but it stung more than she expected. She stared at the dot of blood on her skin, suddenly aware of how much had changed and how little rest she'd had to process it. In just weeks, she'd gone from invisible admin assistant to the face of the company's new mentorship program. From a single mother fighting for her son's next bottle to a woman navigating inheritance lawyers, legacy dinners, and petty glances in high-rise hallways. And now, Now her email inbox read like a battlefield board meeting invites, press interest in the diversity initiative, and one unexpected subject line: request for interview. From the Boston Herald. She frowned. Attached was a message from the editor herself, polite but pointed. We're preparing a story on the recent public filings regarding the Whitaker estate's name change, and would love a quote or comment from Maya Williams. As both program lead and personal relation to Richard Whitaker, Maya leaned back in her chair, fingers still throbbing. There it was again. The real story they were chasing wasn't her mentorship program. It was her blood, her name, and the fact that a black woman from Dorchester had claimed a place inside one of Boston's whitest, wealthiest dynasties. She didn't respond. Not yet. That evening, Maya joined Richard in his office. He was sipping bourbon and listening to jazz on vinyl, the window cracked just enough to let the city sounds in. He looked older today, more human. I got an interview request, she said, dropping into the chair across from him. His expression darkened. Who? The Herald. They want a statement. Or maybe they just want a headline. Richard leaned forward. Do you want to give one? Maya thought about that. I want to control the story. Before someone else does. He nodded slowly. Then we'll do it your way. She hesitated. What happens when this goes public? Richard. When people start asking why a billionaire suddenly recognized a daughter he never claimed and put her child into his will. They'll ask, he said. They'll judge. Some will whisper, some will smile to your face and sharpen knives behind your back. Then why do it? Maya asked. Richard's gaze was steady. Because I didn't choose the past. But I am choosing the future. He stood and poured her a glass of water, as if to offer something small and kind in a moment where everything felt like strategy. I'll stand by you, he said. But you have to decide what kind of truth you're ready to tell. The next day, Maya met with Anika in the cafeteria downstairs. The buzz of the building's staff echoed around them, people getting lunch, pitching ideas, pretending not to gossip. They're watching you, Anika said bluntly, stabbing her salad with more force than necessary. I know, they're waiting for you to mess up. One misstep, and they'll say, see? That's why we don't put women like her in charge. Maya looked her dead in the eye. Then I won't give them that misstep. Nah, Anika nodded. That's what I thought. She slid a thin manila envelope across the table. What's this? Maya asked. An anonymous tip came to our internal ethics inbox last night. Said someone from your old hospital job has been reaching out to reporters, trying to spin a story about Leo's birth implying you were dishonest on the medical records. Maya's jaw clenched. That's a lie. I know, but they're going to twist the timing, the paternity confusion, the DNA test. Simone, Maya muttered. She's not done. Anika lowered her voice. Maya, if this goes big, if the story turns ugly, it could ripple across the mentorship program. And worse, it could hurt Leo. Maya didn't blink. Then I'll get ahead of it. That night, Maya wrote a statement. Not for the press. Not yet. But for herself. It began with a truth. I didn't choose to be born in the shadows, but I am choosing to raise my son in the light. She wrote about Leo, about motherhood, about mistakes and redemption, and the power of names, how they carry history, and how they can be rewritten. How family wasn't about DNA alone, but about who shows up, who stands beside you, and who holds the line when the wind starts to howl. She didn't send it. Not yet, but she felt something settle in her chest. Resolve. A few nights later, she joined Richard for a late dinner. Leo had already gone to bed upstairs, and the house was quiet except for the clinking of forks and the rustle of old jazz vinyl. I'm going to do the interview, she said. Richard raised an eyebrow. Good. You'll do it better than I ever could. She reached across the table and placed the draft of her statement in front of him. He read it slowly, and when he reached the final line, his hands stilled. Legacy isn't what you inherit. It's what you choose to protect. He looked up at her, eyes glassy. You're not just rewriting your name, Maya. You're rewriting mine. She smiled. Then let's make sure it's one worth remembering. The morning of the interview dawned cold and clear. A soft frost dusted the window ledge of Maya's apartment, and the sky above Boston was the kind of steel blue that promised both beauty and burden. Maya stood in her kitchen, pouring formula into Leo's bottle, steady despite the thrum in her chest. Today wasn't just about her. It was about the truth told on her terms. The Boston Herald had offered to meet her at their office downtown. Richard had offered a private location, instead a neutral conference room in one of his company's lesser-known properties. Maya declined both. She chose the public library, the one in Roxbury, the one where her mother used to bring her on Saturday afternoons, where they would sit in the children's corner reading picture books while the world outside forgot them, a place where her name was once meaningless. Now, it was the setting for her voice. The reporter, a woman in her early 40s named Cassandra Holt, arrived exactly on time, with a small leather notebook and a demeanor both sharp and cautious. She greeted Maya with respect, but Maya could see it in her eyes. Cassandra wasn't here for fluff. She was here to peel layers. They sat in a quiet meeting room near the archives. A local librarian brought them tea in chipped mugs. The scent of old pages hung in the air. Maya wore a navy blouse and a soft gray blazer, simple, grounded. No makeup beyond a touch of powder. Let them see her, not a performance. Cassandra opened the notebook. "Let's begin with the easy one," she said. "Why now?" Maya didn't flinch. "Because I finally have something to protect." Cassandra raised an eyebrow. "You mean your son?" "I mean myself," Maya replied. "And yes, Leo too. But this isn't a Cinderella story. It's not about being found by a billionaire or being gifted a better life. What is it about then?" Maya met her gaze. "Accountability. In both directions." Cassandra scribbled something. "You're referring to Richard Whittaker. You've recently confirmed he's your biological father." "Yes. And you're allowing him into your life? Into Leo's? I'm giving him the chance to earn what he lost. I'm not here to pretend 29 years of silence didn't happen. But I am here to say that people can change, if they're willing to face what they ran from." Cassandra paused. "That's generous." "No," Maya said. "It's necessary." "No." The questions continued. About the paternity test, the trust fund, the birth certificate changes, about the mentorship program, and the way corporate America responds to tokenism versus true representation. Then Cassandra leaned in. "One source claims you manipulated the system, lied on medical paperwork to hide Leo's true paternity until it benefited you, that you courted Mr. Whittaker's attention." Maya's hands were folded calmly in her lap. "My son was sick. I was drowning. And no one, not a single person in my world, reached out. So if my plea for help reached the wrong inbox and opened a door that should have never been locked in the first place, then no. I don't apologize." She paused. "And I don't need to justify how a mother saves her child." Cassandra blinked, then nodded, slowly. "I see." Maya took a breath. "I didn't ask to be born without a father. I didn't ask for a legacy. But I am choosing what Leo inherits, not just in wealth, but in dignity, in how we tell our story." Cassandra sat back, pinned still. "That's your headline then," Maya said. Cassandra tilted her head. "This isn't a fairy tale. It's a reckoning." Later that night, Richard read the article online from his office. He clicked through the photos. Maya standing on the steps of the Roxbury Library, Leo in her arms, the light catching just enough of her mother's necklace resting at her throat. The interview was already trending. Board members had called. So had the press office. Richard didn't answer them. He just sat there, staring at the screen, because Maya's words were now his mirror. And she hadn't pulled punches. She'd told the truth. A truth that didn't flatter him, but honored her. At home, Maya sat on the couch with Leo, scrolling through the comments. Some were ugly. Some called her a gold digger. Others accused her of exploiting race and motherhood. But most were quietly grateful. Comments from single moms, from daughters who never knew their fathers, from grandfathers trying to do better, from people who wanted something real to root for. And then, a message from Dana. "Read it twice. Cried both times. You did that. For all of us." Maya smiled, tears stinging. She leaned down and whispered to Leo. "They're listening." He yawned, the kind of deep, innocent yawn of someone untouched by the noise of the world. But one day, he would read this too, and he would know. His mother didn't let them tell the story for her. She wrote it herself. The boardroom on the 27th floor of Whitaker Enterprises gleamed with polished mahogany and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked a glittering Boston skyline. But Maya had learned that behind all the glass and wood, there were cracks, hairline fractures that ran straight through the company's foundation. And tonight, one of them was about to split wide open. Richard stood at the head of the table, his usual calm presence marked by something sterner, something unmistakably paternal. Maya sat to his right, in a tailored charcoal suit, hands folded, chin high. Around the table sat 12 board members, some loyal, some merely strategic, and 2 whose eyes didn't stray far from Maya the entire meeting. Douglas Reed, Senior Vice President of Finance, and Helen Corwin, Head of Legal, had always made their positions clear. The Whitaker girl, as they called her behind closed doors, was a distraction at best, a liability at worst. But after the Herald interview, their whispers had grown sharper. Richard cleared his throat. "I've called this meeting to confirm a permanent leadership role for Maya Williams within the Diversity and Ethics Division, and to approve her official placement as my personal advisor on internal outreach strategy." Maya's breath caught not because she didn't expect it, but because the weight of it was suddenly real. She would no longer just represent change. She would be change. And that frightened some of the people in this room more than any recession ever could. Douglas was the first to speak. "Respectfully, Richard, there are protocols. Maya's appointment lacks the necessary tenure or departmental vetting, and her recent media attention complicates." "She earned the attention," Richard cut in. "She faced the press with integrity, something a few of you have trouble spelling." A few heads turned sharply. Helen leaned forward. "This company has a reputation to manage. Board optics matter. There are concerns about the narrative she's reinforcing." Maya spoke, calm and clear. "The narrative that someone like me doesn't belong in these rooms unless I come through the back entrance?" Silence. She let it linger. "I'm not here because I'm a token. I'm here because I've worked, because I lead, because when your outreach numbers flatlined, I helped build a program that tripled Black applicant engagement in less than a quarter." She looked straight at Helen. "And if the board wants to focus on narrative, then you should be thanking me for the only one this company's had in years that's earned trust without buying it." A few people shifted. Someone cleared their throat. Douglas scowled. "Still, this feels rushed." Richard placed both palms flat on the table. "What's rushed," he said quietly, "is realizing that I built a company on legacy and then ignored my own." He turned to Maya. "My daughter is staying. You don't need to like it, but you will respect it." The vote passed. 8-4. Helen and Douglas voted no. They always would, but it didn't matter. Maya had her seat. Not borrowed, not conditional. Hers. After the meeting, she stood in the hallway outside the boardroom, letting the buzz of adrenaline fade. Richard joined her, buttoning his coat. "You didn't have to go that hard on them," he said, not unkindly. She smirked. "Yes, I did." "Hey, chuckled. True." Then his face sobered. "They'll push back harder now. Try to find cracks in your record, your history, even your personal life." "I know," she said. He hesitated. "There's something I need to tell you." Maya's spine straightened. "What is it?" Richard looked out the window, jaw tight. "A man from your mother's past. His name came up recently. Someone who might have known you were mine before I did. Someone who may have kept things quiet, for a price." Maya frowned. "You think someone blackmailed you?" Richard shook his head. "No. I think someone blackmailed her." The words settled like smoke between them. "I don't have proof yet," he said, "but I'm working on it." Maya nodded slowly. The urge to dig was strong, but for once, she didn't let her instinct to fight take over. "We'll find out," she said. Together. Later that night, Maya sat at her desk with Leo asleep beside her in a bassinet. She reread the notes from the board meeting, then opened her laptop and began drafting the next round of speaker invitations for the mentorship program. Her email pinged. It was from a private, unlisted account. Subject line: "I know what Richard paid to keep your mother silent." Attached, a grainy photo of an old check, dated 1996. Signed, Richard Whitaker. The amount, $40,000. Memo line: medical, discretion. Maya's heart stopped. She read the email again, then sat back slowly. Someone had been watching this story unfold, and now they were ready to rewrite it their way. The photograph of the check burned into Maya's mind like a brand. $40,000. Dated just months before her birth. Labeled, medical. Discretion. Signed in Richard Whitaker's unmistakable hand. It wasn't just a transaction. It was a secret bought and buried. She sat still for several minutes, staring at the screen while Leo's gentle breathing filled the room like a metronome, grounding her. Then she picked up the phone and called Richard. He answered on the second ring. "Maya, did you pay my mother to disappear?" Her voice was steady, cold, professional. On the other end, silence. Then a sigh. "Meet me, tonight." The study at the Whitaker estate was dimly lit when Maya arrived. Richard was already seated, a glass of untouched bourbon on the table before him. The fire crackled behind him, casting flickering shadows on the worn leather of the armchairs. Maya stood, arms crossed, the image of the check still glowing in her mind. "Don't lie to me," she said. "Not now." Richard looked older tonight, like a man carrying decades of grief in his bones. "I didn't pay her to disappear," he said finally. "I paid her to survive." Maya didn't move. "She came to me pregnant," he said. "Scared. Alone. She didn't want to fight, didn't want scandal. God knows she deserved better than what I gave her. But she said one thing clearly. I'm keeping this baby. And you're not going to claim it." He swallowed hard. "I offered to be involved. She refused. Said the world wouldn't let a black woman raise a white man's child in peace. Said my name would only bring more pain." "And the money?" Maya asked. She'd lost her job, had no health insurance. The pregnancy was complicated. "I gave her what I thought would help, without strings. She insisted on no contact. So I honored it." Maya blinked. "And then you just moved on?" "No." His voice cracked. "I buried it, and I hated myself for it every year after." She let the words sit between them. "You didn't look for me," she said finally. "I did, once. Hired a private investigator 5 years later. He found no trace. Said she'd changed her name, moved cities. After that, I assumed she didn't want to be found." Maya sat down, slowly. "She died with nothing," she said. "And I grew up thinking I was nobody's daughter." Richard's eyes shimmered with tears. "And I lived thinking I didn't deserve to be your father." That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She lay on the guest bed staring at the ceiling while Leo stirred softly beside her. The truth hurt, but it wasn't betrayal. It was failure. Old, human failure. The kind that couldn't be rewritten, only faced. She rose quietly and walked down the hallway into the gallery room, where portraits of Richard's ancestors stared down from oil frames, names etched in plaques, legacies sealed in varnish. None of them looked like her. None of them knew her mother's name. But one day, her son would. And that would be enough. The next morning, Maya returned to work at the mentorship office. There was a man waiting outside her door early 60 seconds, white, dressed like a lawyer from an old crime show. He stood when she approached. "Miss Williams?" "Yes? I'm Frederick Kane. I was your mother's landlord, years ago. I'm also the man who took that photo of the check." Maya froze. "I want to talk," he said. "I think I owe you the full story." They sat in the break room. Anika passed by once and did a double take but said nothing. "I found the check the day after your mother died," Mr. Kane began. "She'd kept it in a Bible, along with a letter she never sent." He reached into his coat and handed Maya a folded piece of worn paper. It was her mother's handwriting. Tight, sharp, wounded. "Richard, if you ever read this, I want you to know I did what I thought was right. I didn't want Maya to grow up in shadows, being whispered about, half-claimed. I thought if I kept her away, she could build her life on something real. But I was wrong. She deserved your name. She deserved the truth. I just hope someday you'll give it to her." Maya's throat closed. Mr. Kane spoke again. "I tried to forget about it. But when I saw your name in the news, when I saw the boy's name, I knew I'd waited too long." She looked up. "Why send the threat?" He lowered his eyes. "It wasn't a threat. It was a test. I wanted to see what kind of woman you'd become. And you passed." Maya stared at him. "I didn't send it to the press," he added. "And I won't. But you needed to see what they might find, what they might twist." She folded the letter carefully and placed it in her bag. "Thank you," she said. He stood slowly. I was a coward, Miss Williams. But maybe, in the end, truth still found you. That evening, Maya read the letter aloud to Richard. He didn't speak for a long time. Then finally, she saved me. Even when I didn't deserve it. She saved me too, Maya said. And for the first time, the past didn't feel like an anchor. It felt like a bridge. It had been 6 months since the day Maya received that photograph of the check. 3 months since the mentorship program's expansion was approved in 6 major cities. And just 1 week since Richard Whitaker quietly stepped down as CEO, naming a successor while keeping one advisory position for himself, Director of Legacy Development. But tonight wasn't about corporate legacy. It was about family. The private ceremony was held in the Whitaker Estate's garden, beneath a canopy of autumn leaves and twinkling lights. Dozens of close colleagues, friends, and mentors gathered. There were no press cameras, no speeches, just a small stage, a piano playing in the distance, and 3 people standing at the center of it all. Maya in a deep emerald dress, Leo barely a year old, dressed in white, and Richard, holding a small silver frame. Today, Richard said softly, we honor the name that nearly never was spoken, but will now never be forgotten. He held up the frame, Leo's new birth certificate. Leonard James Whitaker Williams. A name that told a story. A name that stretched back generations but pointed forward. As the guests applauded, Maya stepped up to the microphone, holding Leo on her hip. She smiled gently and began. Names are funny things. They define us before we define ourselves. For most of my life, I thought mine was a mistake, a label slapped on by circumstance, stained by absence. She paused, scanning the crowd. But I've learned that a name doesn't have power because of where it came from. It has power because of what we do with it. She looked down at Leo, who was chewing the corner of his sleeve. This boy will grow up with 2 names, 2 stories, 2 roots, one from a woman who raised him alone, and one from a man who refused to let the past silence the truth any longer. She looked at Richard, who stood quietly in the front row, eyes shimmering. This isn't about blood, she said. It's about belonging. And tonight, my son belongs to all of it. The crowd stood, applauding not out of ceremony, but because something in the air felt rare, whole. Later that night, after the guests had gone and Leo was asleep in the nursery upstairs, Maya and Richard sat together on the back porch. A crisp wind rustled the trees, but neither moved. Richard held a glass of water, his bourbon days behind him now. Maya had a mug of lukewarm tea she hadn't touched. He turned to her. I've written a letter, he said, for Leo, for when he turns 18. May. She nodded. You should. He'll have questions. He already does, she smiled. He just doesn't know how to ask them yet. Richard chuckled, then grew quiet. Do you think your mother would forgive me? Maya didn't answer right away. Instead, she said, I think she'd be watching him right now. I think she'd be proud of what he'll carry, because of both of us. Richard swallowed hard and looked out at the stars. I failed once. She placed a hand on his. Don't fail again. He nodded slowly. I won't. 3 weeks later, Maya stood on stage at a National Women's Leadership Conference in Chicago. The crowd was older, wiser, women with gray streaks and full lives. They'd read her story. They'd seen the interview. They came to hear about equity. But Maya spoke about legacy. She spoke about silence, about being underestimated, about how justice doesn't always wear a robe. It sometimes looks like a hallway conversation, a refiled birth certificate, a withheld apology finally delivered. And as the audience rose to their feet, Maya knew. She had reclaimed more than her name. She had rewritten the ending, not into a fairy tale, but into something better. The truth. The kind you can hand down like an heirloom. One name at a time. The story of Maya Williams teaches us that legacy is not just something we inherit, it's something we choose to redefine. Through courage, truth, and forgiveness, Maya reclaimed her identity, not to erase the past, but to honor it while building a better future for her son. It reminds us that family isn't defined by blood alone, but by accountability, healing, and the willingness to do what's right, even when it's difficult. In a world that often silences the voiceless, Maya's journey shows that speaking your truth can change everything, not just for you, but for generations to come.